Canto 34, the ninth circle, fourth ring, called Judeca, where traitors against their benefactors are fully covered by ice. Dis, or Lucifer, emperor of that kingdom, his three mouths surrounding Judas, Brutus, and Cassius. Descent of Virgil and Dante, down Lucifer's body to the other southern hemisphere, their vision of the stars. Vexilla regis produent inferni toward us, and therefore keep your eyes ahead, my master said, to see if you can spy him, just as when night falls on our hemisphere, or when a heavy fog is blowing thick, a windmill seems to wheel when seen far off. So then I seemed to see that sort of structure, and next, because the wind was strong, I shrank behind my guide. There was no other shelter, and now, with fear, I set it down in meter. I was there, all the shades were fully covered, but visible as wisps of straw and glass. There some lie flat, and others stand erect, one on his head and one upon his soles, and some bend face to feet, just like a bow. But after we had made our way ahead, my master felt he now should have seen me, or should now have me see that creature who was once a handsome presence. He stepped aside and made me stop and said, "Look, here is this, and this the place where you will have to arm yourself with fortitude. O reader, do not ask me of how I grew faint and frozen, then I cannot write it. All words will fall far short of what it was. I did not die, and I was not alive. Think for yourself, if you have any wit, what I became, deprived of life and death. The emperor of the despondent kingdom so towered from the ice up the mid-chest that I matched better with a giant's breath than giants matched the measure of his arms. Now you can gauge the size of all of him if it is in proportion to such parts. If he was once as handsome as he now is ugly, and despite that raised his brows against his maker, one can understand how every sorrow has its source in him. I marveled when I saw that on his head he had three faces, one in front, blood red, and the other two, that just above the midpoint of each shoulder joined the first, and at that crown all three were reattached. The right looked somewhat yellow, somewhat white. The left in its appearance was like those who come from where the Nile descending flows. Beneath each face of his, two wings spread out as broad as suited so immense a bird. I've never seen a ship with sails so wide. They had no feathers, but were fashioned like a bat's, and he was agitating them so that three winds made their way out from him, and all Cocytus froze before those winds. Cocytus, Cocytus, froze before those winds. He wept out of his 6 eyes and down 3 chins. Tears gushed together with a bloody froth. Within each mouth he used it like a grinder. With gnashing teeth he tore 2 bits of sinner, so that he brought much pain to 3 at once. The forward sinner found that biting nothing when matched against the clawing, for at times his back was stripped completely of its hide. That soul up there who has to suffer most, my master said. Judas Iscariot, his head inside, he jerks his legs without. Of those 2 others with their heads beneath, the one who hangs from that black snout is Brutus. See how he writhes. That word again, writhes. W-R-I-T-H-E-S, and does not say a word. That other, who seems so robust, is Cassius. But night is come again, and it is time for us to leave. We have seen everything. So Brutus and Cassius, Brutus and Cassius. Just as he asked, I clasped him around the neck, and he watched for the chance of time and place, and when the wings were open wide enough, he took fast hold upon the shaggy flanks, and then descended down from tuft to tuft between the tangled hair and icy crust. When we had reached the point at which the thigh revolves, just at the swelling of the ship, my guide, with heavy strain and rugged work, reversed his head to where his legs had been, and grappled on the hair. As one who climbs, I thought that we were going back to hell. Hold tight, my master said. He panted like a man exhausted. It is by such stairs that we must take our leave of so much evil. Then he slipped through a crevice in a rock and placed me on the edge of it. That done, he climbed toward me with steady steps. I raised my eyes, believing I should see the half of Lucifer that I had left. Instead, I saw him with his legs turned up. And if I then became perplexed, do let the ignorant be judges, those who cannot understand what point I had just crossed. Get up, my master said. Be on your feet. The way is long, the path is difficult. The sun's already back to the middle tierce. T-I-E-R-C-E. It was no palace hall, the place in which we found ourselves, but with its rough hewn floor and scanty light, a dungeon built by nature. Before I free myself from this abyss, master, I said when I had stood up straight, tell me enough to see I don't mistake. Where was the ice, and how was he so placed head downward? Tell me, too, how has the sun in so few hours gone from night to morning, and he to me? You still believe you are north of the center, where I grasp the hair of the damned worm who pierces through the world. And you were there as long as I descended, but when I turned, that's when you passed the point to which from every part all weights are drawn. And now you stand beneath the hemisphere, opposing that which cloaks the great dry lands, and underneath whose zenith died the man whose birth and life were sinless in the world. Okay, and now you stand beneath the hemisphere, opposing that which cloaks the great dry lands, and underneath whose zenith died the man whose birth and life were sinless in this world. Your feet are placed upon a little sphere that forms the other face of the Judeca. Here it is morning when it's evening there, and he whose hair has served us as a ladder is still fixed, even as he was before. This was the side on which he fell from heaven. For fear of him, the land that once loomed here made of the sea a veil and rose into our hemisphere. Okay, for fear of him. Okay, this was the side on which he fell from heaven. For fear of him, the land that once loomed here made of the sea a veil and rose into our hemisphere. And that land which appears upon this side, perhaps to flee from him, left here this hollow space and hurried upward. There was a place below the limit of thy cave, its farthest point from Beelzebub, a place one cannot see. It is discovered by ear. There was a sounding stream that flows along the hollow of a rock eroded by winding waters, and the slope is easy. My guide and I came on that hidden road to make our way back into the bright world, and with no care for any rest we climbed here first, I following until I saw through a round opening some of those things of beauty heaven bears. It was from there that we emerged to see once more the stars. Finally finished this book, bro. Like, the only thing, I could read all day. The only thing is the people around me and me having to use the restroom like I do now. And then I'm gonna go drive to the library and pick up my other book. God, yes, this book. So now I have 3 books from the library. I'm gonna go pick one up right now and probably get another one. But I'm working on these right now. And then I will make my way to Frankenstein. Ha, 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 Frankenstein. I think people are going to enjoy this one when I put it on my YouTube and my social medias and let them know they could read along to this Frankenstein. But now I got to go to the library and get one more book, and I'm probably going to ask for another one. A very short book called The Pearl. Peace, y'all.